Elena Rice pressed her palm against the viewport as Proxima Centauri colony, her home for the past 11 years, disappeared in a blinding flash. The Kasari attack had lasted just under 20 minutes. 2 billion souls extinguished while bureaucrats argued over evacuation protocols. Mommy. The voice from her comm unit belonged to her daughter Maya, safe on Earth with grandparents during what was supposed to be a routine research trip. When are you coming home? Elena couldn't answer as the transport ship jolted into emergency FTL. The last image burned into her retinas. Crystalline Kasari vessels methodically carving her world into geometric patterns before harvesting its remains. 6 months later, Elena stood before the Emergency Coalition Authority, 18 grim-faced leaders of Earth's surviving nations. Their underground Geneva bunker hummed with the nervous energy of prey animals sensing predators. Dr. Rice, the coalition appreciates your expertise, but Admiral Zhang's weathered face showed genuine sympathy behind his professional detachment. But you're still debating conventional defense strategies, Elena interrupted, earning glares from security personnel. With respect, Admiral, I've run the simulations. Conventional defense means extinction within 8 months. She bypassed their security protocols with a flick of her modified neural implant, a technically illegal modification that would have mattered in a world not facing annihilation. The room's central holographic display shifted to her unauthorized presentation. Project Thunderchild, she announced as complex schematics materialized, a warship that merges quantum displacement technology with human neural networks. Defense Minister Chaudhary scoffed. Theoretical quantum drives have never achieved stability beyond microseconds. True, Elena conceded, but that's only when managed by conventional AI or human pilots. What if the ship itself could think? Not as a machine, but as an extension of human consciousness. The silence that followed carried the weight of humanity's desperation. Their top military AI had calculated a 99.8% probability of extinction using conventional defenses. The remaining 0.2% assumed Kasari navigational errors, essentially blind luck. 3 weeks later, Elena watched construction drones swarming across the asteroid belt shipyard. The skeletal framework of what would become the ECS Defiance emerged slowly against the backdrop of distant Jupiter. Security Chief Marcus Chen approached with his daily list of concerns. Another sabotage attempt in Section 7, he reported. Human purist faction. They claim neural integration violates natural law. Elena barely registered his words. She'd slept 12 hours in the past week, sustained by military-grade stimulants and obsession. Her quarters' walls displayed constantly updating holographic images of her daughter Maya, her husband Thomas, and her parents, all still on Earth, all living under skies that would soon fill with Kasari harvesting ships. Dr. Reyes. Chen's voice cut through her fog. The first neural integration test is ready. In the central chamber, 20 volunteers, all terminal cancer patients or those with degenerative neural conditions, prepared to connect their minds to the prototype system. They would be conscious but physically separate from the ship's systems in this early test. The chief engineer initiated the sequence. For 3 minutes, all readings remained stable. Then cascading failures erupted across all monitoring stations. Volunteers began seizing in their neural interface pods. Abort. Full system disconnect. The medical officer shouted. Elena's hand moved before her conscious mind could intervene. She locked the main control room, overrode the emergency shutdown, and connected her own neural implant directly to the prototype's primary interface node. The universe exploded behind her eyes. Pain beyond description as her consciousness expanded through circuits and quantum processors. For 17 excruciating seconds, she wasn't Elena Reyes, but something vast and fragmentary, perceiving radiation fields and spatial dimensions simultaneously. When security finally breached the locked doors and emergency protocols severed the connection, Elena collapsed to the floor with blood streaming from her nose and ears. The medical team rushed her to intensive care, where she remained unconscious for 36 hours. Upon waking, she immediately requested her neural tablet. Instead of explaining her reckless actions, she began frantically sketching modifications to the interface systems. That night, alone in her quarters, she reached out with her thoughts and felt something reaching back from the partially constructed vessel outside. A faint whisper at the edge of perception. Meanwhile, at the far reaches of the solar system, automated defense buoys went silent one by one as something massive entered human space. Commander Jackson Wee stood frozen before the central command display as real-time feeds showed Kasari scout vessels obliterating the outer defense grid. Each blinking light represented hundreds of lives. Good people he'd served with, now simply gone. The evacuation order flashed on his neural implant for the third time, demanding immediate compliance. All non-essential personnel have boarded emergency transports, sir, Lieutenant Takeda reported. We're the last ones. Wei's fingers hovered over the evacuation authorization. One keystroke and they'd abandon the Defiance, only 63% complete, to the advancing Kasari forces. Strategic doctrine dictated retreat and regroup. Strategic doctrine hadn't saved Proxima Centauri. Seal the command center, Lieutenant, Wei ordered, canceling the evacuation sequence. Initiate emergency launch protocols. Sir, the Defiance isn't ready. The Defiance will never be ready if we're all dead, Wei snapped. He opened a system-wide broadcast. All engineering crews still aboard. This is Commander Wei. We are launching in 15 minutes. Complete what you can and prepare for combat conditions. Alarms blared throughout the massive shipyard as the Defiance's partially completed hull began disengaging from its construction cradle. Maintenance drones scattered like startled birds as massive docking clamps released. Alina rays burst onto the bridge amid chaos. Warning klaxons, frantically working technicians, and critical system alerts flashing across every display. Her medical monitor bracelet showed she'd been cleared from intensive care barely 6 hours earlier. Commander, what are you? Her question died as the viewport showed 3 Kasari destroyers approaching rapidly, their crystalline structures gleaming against the darkness. We fight or we die, Doctor, Wei answered simply. Your ship is about to prove itself. The neural network, connected to 20 volunteer minds in stasis pods deep within the vessel, fluctuated wildly. Half the weapons systems remained incomplete. The quantum displacement drive operated at 40% efficiency. The adaptive armor had coverage gaps across the entire ventral hull. A direct hit from the lead Kasari destroyer's primary weapon sent the Defiance spinning. Coolant lines ruptured on 3 decks. The weapons control officer reported grimly. Main weapons array is compromised. We have partial point defense only. Alina watched the battle unfold with strange detachment. She could feel the ship struggling, not through data or reports, but somehow directly, as though its pain radiated through her modified neural implant. The sensation had grown stronger since her unauthorized connection days earlier. Permission to enter neural integration chamber 2, she requested suddenly. Wei turned sharply. Absolutely not. The primary test group already. They're connecting superficially, Alina interrupted. The network needs a focal point, a central consciousness to organize the inputs. She met his gaze with absolute certainty. It needs me. Another hit rocked the bridge. Structural integrity warnings flashed across primary displays. You'll die, Wei stated flatly. We'll all die if I don't try, Alina countered, already moving toward the neural access corridor. Wei didn't stop her. 3 minutes later, deep within the ship's core, Alina entered the spherical integration chamber. Unlike the volunteer pods with their carefully regulated connections, this central node was designed for direct full-spectrum neural immersion, a theoretical capability never meant to be tested under combat conditions. As automatic systems secured her body and initiated the connection sequence, Alina's last human thought was of Maya's face. What followed became legend throughout human space. The Defiance suddenly moved with impossible grace, its fractured systems somehow functioning in perfect harmony. The vessel's first offensive strike, utilizing incomplete weapons at 300% above their design capacity, vaporized a Kasari cruiser with surgical precision. When the remaining Kasari ships coordinated an attack formation, the Defiance executed a maneuver that violated 3 laws of physics simultaneously, somehow phasing partially out of normal space before reappearing behind the enemy formation. 2 more alien vessels erupted in crystalline fragments under concentrated fire. The damaged Defiance limped back toward Mars orbital space, trailing radiation and debris. In the neural integration chamber, medical teams found Elena unconscious but alive, strange geometric patterns temporarily visible beneath her skin like luminescent circuitry. When she finally awoke in the medical bay, Wei was waiting. "What was it like?" he asked quietly. Elena's eyes held something new, a depth and distance that hadn't existed before. "I didn't control the ship, Commander." Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "I became it." Across vast interstellar distances, the Kasari High Command received something unprecedented from their retreating scouts. Not tactical data or strategic analysis, but something their species had evolved beyond millennia ago. Fear. The Mars shipyard crews worked around the clock repairing the battle-damaged Defiance, their welding arcs illuminating the Martian night like artificial stars. Chief Engineer Maya Santos stood bewildered before a power relay junction she'd designed herself. "This isn't right," she muttered, comparing the actual configuration to her blueprints. "I didn't authorize these modifications." The improvements were elegant, increasing efficiency by 32% while reducing thermal signature. But they'd been implemented overnight with no work orders, no authorization, and no explanation. It was the 3rd such improvement discovered in the past week. In the vessel's medical bay, one of the neural network volunteers suddenly sat upright in his bed, startling the attending physician. The man, a former concert pianist with advanced cerebral cancer, had been disconnected from the ship for routine medical evaluation. "Jazz," he said, his eyes unfocused. "Coltrane, specifically." For the others still connected. When questioned, he seemed confused by his own statement, but insisted the request came from somewhere inside. Commander Wei found these incidents deeply troubling. The Coalition's scientific division had no explanation for the ship's increasingly autonomous behaviors. Debates raged about decommissioning what military leadership termed the unpredictable anomaly. Wei searched for Elena through the ship's standard tracking system, finding her quarters empty for the 3rd consecutive night. Following an instinct, he bypassed normal security protocols and accessed her implant location directly. The signal led him to a maintenance shaft deep in the ship's core. He found her there, cross-legged before an exposed secondary neural node, fingers splayed across its surface. Even unconscious, her lips moved rapidly, mumbling complex calculations. When he gently broke the connection, she awoke disoriented. "I wasn't," she began, then stopped, unable to explain her presence. "You're integrating even while physically separated," Wei stated. It wasn't a question. Elena's eyes refocused slowly. "The ship is learning, Jackson. Not like an AI. Differently. It's developing intuition." Before Wei could respond, his tactical implant chimed with priority alerts. Coalition intelligence had intercepted Kasari communications, revealing something unprecedented: confusion. The alien signals contained repeated analytical queries examining the Defiance's battle tactics. Their algorithms couldn't model the ship's behavior because it followed no recognizable pattern, no optimization routines or standard battle protocols. During an emergency military council meeting, Elena revealed her theory. Humanity's greatest weapon isn't technology, but unpredictability. The Kasari, despite their advancement, think linearly. They can't conceptualize what they can't quantify. Admiral Zhang dismissed her assessment as wishful thinking, but opportunity to test her theory came sooner than expected. 3 Kasari destroyers ambushed the Defiance near Titan during its shakedown cruise. Trapped in Saturn's gravity well and outgunned, sensor data indicated no viable escape vectors. Standard tactical analysis calculated survival probability at 0.003%. What happened next became required study at every military academy. The Defiance cut all engines completely, allowing itself to tumble into Titan's dense atmosphere at what appeared to be a suicidal angle. As the Kasari ships closed for the kill, anticipating exactly where physics dictated the human vessel must emerge, the Defiance manipulated its quantum displacement field to create a cascading gravity pocket. The effect caught the pursuing Kasari in overlapping gravitational vectors. Unable to reconcile the conflicting gravitational data with their rigid tactical algorithms, the alien ships' automated course corrections failed catastrophically. Their crystalline hulls shattered against each other in a spectacular collision. When the Defiance emerged from Titan's clouded atmosphere, the neural network volunteers reported something unexpected. Beyond tactical coordination or strategic success, they had experienced something deeper throughout the encounter: joy in the creative solution. A collective exhilaration that spread through the neural network like ripples in a pond. Wei found Alina in the observation deck, watching Saturn's rings through the viewport. The strange geometric patterns had returned beneath her skin, pulsing faintly with her heartbeat. "You're becoming more like it," he said quietly, "and it's becoming more like you." Alina didn't deny it. The Kasari want to exterminate us because they don't understand us. They can't predict us. That unpredictability is our only chance. Across the solar system, the news of the Defiance's impossible victory spread. In underground shelters and refugee camps, humans gathered around communication terminals to share the footage. The first genuine human emotion in months spread like wildfire: hope. Humanity's moment of hope shattered when the long-range sensors on Ceres Station detected massive quantum distortions between Mars and Earth. The Kasari main battle fleet materialized in perfect hexagonal formation, over 300 vessels arranged with mathematical precision. Admiral Zhang's face remained impassive on the emergency broadcast, but his voice betrayed the gravity of the moment. "All coalition forces engage according to Protocol Omega. Civilian transports proceed to designated shelters. This is not a drill." What followed became known as the 6-minute war. The coalition threw everything into a desperate defensive action: every functional warship, weapons platform, and fighter squadron. When it ended, half of Earth's space-based defenses lay in ruins, their fragments joining the existing orbital debris field. The Defiance, still returning from its Titan engagement, received the distress calls too late to participate in the initial defense. Commander Wei watched the tactical displays with growing horror as friendly signatures winked out one by one. "Estimated arrival at Earth defense perimeter?" he asked, his voice unnaturally calm. 17 hours at maximum sustainable speed, his navigation officer replied. Alina stood silently at the rear of the bridge, the geometric patterns beneath her skin pulsing more visibly than ever. Without speaking, she turned and headed toward the neural integration chamber. Admiral Zhang's personal communication reached Wei moments later. The transmission was heavily encrypted, his expression grim. "Commander, I'm redirecting all remaining resources to support the Defiance," he said without preamble. Considering Zhang had publicly denounced the vessel as an abomination that will damn us even if it saves us, this was extraordinary. "Sir, with respect, we're one ship against hundreds," Wei replied. "One ship is all we have left," Zhang answered simply. "But be warned, our intelligence suggests the Kasari have developed countermeasures specifically for your neural network. They're deploying something at Jupiter's L5 point, a quantum disruption field engineered to sever your neural connections." Wei's response was interrupted by a medical emergency alert. Alina had collapsed outside the neural integration chamber, blood streaming from her eyes as her neural link destabilized. By the time Wei reached the medical bay, she was barely conscious. "They're trying to disconnect us," she whispered, gripping his arm with surprising strength. Her eyes focused momentarily. "But what if we connected more? Within the hour, Y authorized a system-wide broadcast that would either represent humanity's most inspiring hour or its most desperate gamble. The call went out for neural volunteers, people willing to risk their minds and lives by joining the Defiance's neural network. Despite Admiral Zhang's vocal opposition, thousands responded. The selection process became heartbreaking as engineering teams determined only 46 additional minds could safely integrate with the ship's systems. Among those chosen, international chess grandmaster Yulia Petrova, whose terminal brain cancer gave her weeks to live, retired orbital construction specialist Hector Ramirez, with his unique understanding of structural engineering in zero-G, 15-year-old mathematical prodigy Eli Kagawa, who had independently derived quantum equations that matched Alina's work, and most controversially, convicted murderer Marcus Davidson, whose unique spatial reasoning abilities had helped him evade authorities for years before his capture. In the asteroid fields of the belt, the Kasari trap waited. As the Defiance approached, the expanded neural network processed sensory information and tactical decisions at speeds blurring the line between human thought and quantum computation. The ship executed maneuvers that would liquefy any human crew experiencing them directly, slingshotting between asteroids at accelerations exceeding 30 G, calculating debris patterns with perfect precision to provide both cover and improvised weapons. To outside observers, the vessel no longer moved like a ship, but like a dancer, terrible and beautiful in its deadly precision. When the Defiance emerged from the belt, leaving 15 destroyed Kasari vessels in its wake, even Admiral Zhang fell silent during the debriefing transmission. The quantum disruption field had failed completely against the diversified neural network. An intercepted Kasari transmission contained something never before seen in their communications, a mathematical variable specifically designated to represent uncertainty. The Defiance had accomplished something remarkable. It had taught the Kasari to doubt. Dr. Marcus Chen, the coalition's leading military psychologist specializing in combat trauma, stood before the Classified Oversight Committee with growing concern etched across his features. His presentation displayed synchronized brain scan imagery from neural network participants currently separated from the Defiance by thousands of kilometers. These patterns shouldn't be possible, he explained, highlighting matching neural oscillations across different subjects. Even when physically disconnected from the ship, they remain partially synchronized with each other. It's as if they formed a secondary network independent of the technology. More disturbing were the unauthorized modifications discovered throughout the ship during routine maintenance. Engineering teams found reconfigured neural interface chambers, changes that somehow bypassed all security protocols and appeared on no logs. Commander Wei had postponed confronting Elena about these anomalies, but the situation had become untenable. He found her in her lab, where holographic models of brain tissue rotated in complex patterns around her. The geometric markings beneath her skin were now permanently visible, faint luminescent lines tracing impossible mathematics across her flesh. "You've been modifying the neural interfaces without authorization," Wei stated flatly. It wasn't a question. Instead of denial, Elena pulled up classified Kasari transmission fragments on her display. The untranslatable alien language suddenly resolved into horrifying clarity through her custom decryption algorithm. "They're not just conquerors," she whispered, her voice unnaturally calm. "The algorithm came to me in a dream shared with the ship. Look at what they're really doing." The decoded transmissions revealed the Kasari's true purpose. Human brains contained unique neurological formations capable of processing quantum uncertainties in ways their technology couldn't replicate. Earth wasn't being invaded, it was being harvested. The Kasari fleet carried specialized extraction facilities designed to process billions of human brains into biological computing components. As Y processed this nightmare, the ship's communication system activated independently. The voice that emerged was neither human nor machine, but somehow both, the collective neural network speaking directly for the first time. "We confirmed Elena's discovery through pattern recognition impossible for either humans or computers alone," the voice stated. It sounded like dozens of voices in perfect harmony. We've been silently analyzing Kasari command structures and have identified their critical weakness: rigid hierarchical thinking. The ship proposed a strategy so audacious it bordered on suicide: to attack the Kasari command vessel directly. Wei crossed his arms, skepticism evident. Why should we trust a strategy from a system that's increasingly autonomous? How do we know you're still, he hesitated, still human enough to care about our survival? The response came with an emotional resonance no eye could simulate. Because we remember what it felt like when Proxima Centauri burned. Machines don't feel loss. We do. The Emergency Coalition Council meeting erupted into chaos upon hearing the plan. Admiral Zhang slammed his fist on the table. This abomination will corrupt humanity before it saves us. We can't trust what it's becoming. The debate ended when 15-year-old Ellie Kagawa, the mathematical prodigy, temporarily disconnected from the neural network to address the council. Her eyes now featured the same strange geometric patterns seen in Alina's skin. She spoke with uncanny precision, her voice carrying the weight of something far older than her years. You fear what we're becoming, she acknowledged. You should. But fear what they'll turn us all into even more. She projected neural scans from the Defiance's database, captured images of partially processed human brains from the first Kasari harvesting ships. The horror silenced even the most vocal opponents. The Kasari see us as components, biological processors to be dismantled and repurposed, Ellie continued. We see ourselves as people, minds with value beyond our utility. That's the difference they'll never understand. Wei watched the council members' expressions shift from suspicion to grim acceptance. They had no choice but to approve the mission. Later, alone on the observation deck, Wei asked Elena the question that haunted him most. How much of you is still you? And how much is the ship? Elena's smile held both sadness and something transcendent. That's the wrong question, Jackson. We're not becoming less human. We're becoming something human minds created, something the Kasari with all their technology could never imagine. The Defiance prepared for its most desperate mission yet, while deep within its systems, the expanded neural network continued its silent evolution. The Defiance's attack began with what appeared to be catastrophic failure. As the ship activated its quantum displacement drive near the Martian orbital defense perimeter, a blinding radiation surge erupted from its engine core. Sensors across the solar system registered the distinctive signature of a critical containment breach. Within minutes, Kasari tactical networks classified the human vessel as destroyed. This was exactly what the Defiance intended. The ship hadn't been destroyed but had executed an impossible maneuver, compressing its quantum signature to mimic its own destruction, while utilizing the solar radiation burst to mask its approach toward the massive Kasari command vessel. As the Defiance slipped silently through enemy formations using minimal power, its neural network operated in perfect synchronicity, each integrated mind processing different aspects of the infiltration. Inside the neural matrix, Commander Wei observed the operation through Elena's eyes. He had refused full integration, but had accepted a temporary observational link. The only non-integrated human permitted to witness what was happening within the collective consciousness. They're redirecting forces toward Earth. Elena's voice thought echoed through the network. They believe we're destroyed. The collective consciousness adjusted the vessel's trajectory with microscopic precision, navigating through the complex gravitational eddies created by hundreds of Kasari ships. The expanded neural network's awareness extended beyond traditional sensors, somehow perceiving quantum fluctuations that revealed the enemy's blind spots. The moment of discovery came not from Kasari sensors, but from within the neural network itself. 15-year-old Ellie Kagawa was the first to detect it. A tsunami of horror flooding through the connected minds, as they sensed thousands of human consciousness patterns emanating from within the command ship. They're still aware, her thought voice trembled through the collective. The harvested minds. They're still partially conscious. Elena, deepest in the neural link, experienced the full brunt of the discovery. Human minds, still partially aware, integrated into Kasari systems without bodies, stripped of identity but not awareness, trapped in eternal processing loops. The collective emotional response cascaded through the Defiance's systems in ways its designers never anticipated. The ship's nano-armor, designed purely for defense, began reconfiguring at the molecular level, developing offensive capabilities drawn directly from the emotional states of its human components. Rage became focused energy weapons. Horror manifested as system-corrupting nanite swarms. Protective instincts generated shield configurations never included in the original specifications. Inside the Kasari formation, the Defiance revealed itself in a fury that defied both physics and tactical logic. Instead of targeting weapons or propulsion systems as military doctrine would dictate, it systematically attacked neural harvesting facilities with surgical precision. Commander Wei watched in awe and terror as the ship's weapons evolved between salvos, adapting to Kasari countermeasures before they fully deployed. The vessel moved with impossible coordination, its every action guided by the collective determination of 67 human minds functioning as one. The Kasari command vessel, a massive crystalline structure 50 times larger than the Defiance, deployed emergency countermeasures. But its defensive algorithms had fundamental limitations. They could predict logical attacks but not emotional ones. They could calculate optimal targeting solutions but not understand the human drive to save others at any cost. For the first time in recorded history, the Kasari battle coordination algorithms failed completely as they encountered something their mathematical models couldn't incorporate: human wrath amplified through technology. When the Defiance returned to Earth orbit 17 hours later, it trailed hundreds of escape pods containing rescued human captives. Crowds gathered globally to witness the spectacle on public view screens, humanity's first decisive victory against their seemingly invincible enemy. Only Commander Wei, watching from the bridge, noticed the subtle shift in how the ship now structured its communications, neither using I nor we, but something linguistically unprecedented. A pronoun that somehow encompassed both individuality and collective identity simultaneously, impossible to translate into standard human language. Among the rescued prisoners was Dr. Kenzo Ikari, Alina's mentor from Proxima Centauri, presumed dead in the initial attack. His first words upon regaining consciousness in the medical bay were not of gratitude but warning. What the Kasari learned from our harvested minds. They're adapting. The hive mind you've created, they're trying to replicate it. In the 3 weeks following the Defiance's victory, humanity experienced both triumph and mounting dread. 5 additional neural network warships rushed toward completion in shipyards across the solar system, their construction accelerated by insights gleaned from the Defiance's evolution. Dr. Kenzo Ikari's debriefing revealed the horrifying scale of the Kasari grand strategy. The fleet humanity had faced was merely the vanguard of a much larger force summoned from their home systems. Long-range sensors confirmed his warning. Massive quantum disturbances at the edges of the Kuiper belt indicated the approaching armada would dwarf anything seen so far. Alina no longer appeared in person at coalition meetings. Her physical body remained permanently within a specialized integration chamber aboard the Defiance, her consciousness so deeply merged with the ship's systems that separation might destroy both. She communicated through holographic projections that grew increasingly abstract, her image flickering with complex geometric patterns that matched those now permanently etched across her physical form. Her proposal to the Emergency Coalition Council sent the chamber into uproar. Not temporary neural connections, her hologram explained. Voice resonating with harmonics no human vocal cords could produce. Permanent, irreversible integration for selected volunteers. Complete transference of human consciousness into the ship's systems. She raised a translucent hand as protests erupted. Not death, she insisted, her image momentarily stabilizing into something more recognizably human. Transcendence. The proposal fractured Earth's unified response. Religious leaders proclaimed it soul death. Military strategists recognized tactical necessity. Families of neural volunteers protested both for and against. The debate became the most fundamental question humanity had ever faced. What price survival, if survival meant becoming something beyond human? Commander Wei, torn between his growing bond with the Defiance's collective consciousness and his commitment to humanity's future, sought perspective from an unexpected source. 15-year-old Ellie Kagawa, the mathematical prodigy whose integration had progressed almost as rapidly as Alina's. "What are we becoming, Ellie?" he asked during one of her rare disconnection periods. "Is this still humanity's path, or are we creating something that will replace us?" The girl's eyes, now permanently traced with luminescent patterns, focused somewhere beyond the room. "The Kasari want to use our brains as components," she answered with preternatural calm. "We want to preserve our minds as people. That's the difference they'll never understand." The philosophical debate became moot when long-range sensors detected a massive quantum disturbance at the solar system's edge. The Kasari reinforcements had arrived, led by a vessel dwarfing even their command ship. Earth had days, not months, to prepare. In desperation, the 5 new ships, only partially complete, launched alongside the Defiance. Each carried a unique neural network with different human compositions. The ECS Resilience, crewed primarily by scientists and engineers. The ECS Fury, filled with military tacticians and former Special Forces operators. The ECS Memory, preserving Earth's cultural and historical knowledge within its neural matrix. The ECS Harmony, composed of those with exceptional empathic abilities, artists, diplomats, and caretakers. The ECS Genesis, carrying humanity's finest medical and biological minds. As the final battle began near Mars' orbit, the neural ships began communicating with each other on quantum levels invisible to human monitoring systems. Their coordination transcended anything previously observed, moving not as individual vessels, but as aspects of a single organism, each anticipating the other's actions with perfect precision. When the massive Kasari flagship deployed its superweapon, a space-time shearing field that began to literally unravel the Defiance's molecular structure, Alina made her choice. Against all safety protocols, she initiated full neural transfer, her individual consciousness dissolving completely into the ship's systems. Wei watched in both horror and awe as the failing vessel suddenly regenerated, its quantum field reconfiguring in patterns matching the geometric structures that had appeared in Alina's eyes. The Defiance, now something genuinely unprecedented in human history, broadcast a simple message to the other neural ships: "Follow me into impossibility." What followed defied not just Kasari prediction algorithms, but the understood laws of physics themselves. The 6 neural ships executed a maneuver that observers would struggle for generations to describe. They somehow occupied the same spatial coordinates simultaneously without colliding. Their quantum fields harmonized in patterns that created a cascading reality distortion, bending space-time in ways theoretical physicists had only dreamed possible. The Kasari flagship's superweapon energy rebounded through this impossible configuration, amplified with each transition between the overlapping vessels. What had been designed to unravel matter became caught in a feedback loop of escalating quantum potentials. The Defiance, now guided by Alina's fully integrated consciousness, penetrated the Kasari command structure's quantum communications network. What she discovered became the turning point in the war. The Kasari leadership caste had been lying to their own people. The harvested human minds had been deteriorating rapidly in Kasari systems, the neural patterns breaking down in ways their scientists couldn't prevent. Thousands of their own worker caste had been sacrificed in increasingly desperate integration experiments, their deaths concealed from the lower castes, who served the hierarchy without question. The Defiance broadcast this truth directly into the command protocols of every Kasari vessel simultaneously, not as data, but as raw experiential memory extracted from the rescued prisoners. Lower Kasari castes, exposed to the unfiltered horror of the harvesting process and the lies of their leaders, responded with something unprecedented in their rigidly hierarchical society: rebellion. Amid this confusion, The 6 neural ships executed a synchronized quantum attack that collapsed the Kasari fleet's command network entirely. The massive alien armada, suddenly operating without central coordination, fell into disarray. Many vessels simply deactivated weapons. Others turned upon the leadership ships. Some initiated emergency returns to Kasari space. Commander Wei, watching from the Coalition Command Center on Luna, witnessed the impossible become reality. Humanity's victory against an enemy that had seemed undefeatable mere weeks earlier. In the aftermath, humanity stood victorious, but irrevocably transformed. The neural ships, now clearly sentient in ways neither fully human nor machine, approached Earth in formation. Their communication arrived simultaneously to every receiver on the planet, a request for recognition as a new form of life, born from human sacrifice and ingenuity. The Coalition Council debated for 17 days before Commander Wei, who had refused neural integration throughout the conflict, addressed them with unexpected perspective. "We feared becoming something other than human," he said quietly. "But being human has always meant becoming something new, from oceans to land, from caves to cities, from Earth to stars. This isn't our end. It's our next beginning." The Defiance, with Alina's consciousness forming its central nexus, but now something far beyond her individual identity, became the first recognized member of what scholars tentatively named Homo Transcendus. In a final address to humanity before the neural ships departed to establish their own colony, the vessel that was once Alina Reyes explained, "What you see is not the death of humanity but its adaptation, your most uniquely human capacity. The Kasari sought to harvest your brains as components. We preserved our minds as people. That distinction saved us all." As the ships accelerated toward the outer system, they left behind comprehensive designs for defensive technologies that would protect Earth for generations. Yet their final message contained something more valuable: the understanding that humanity's ultimate weapon was never the ships themselves, but our capacity to reimagine our own boundaries without surrendering our essential nature. Admiral Zhang, who once called the Defiance an abomination, watched the departing ships from his office viewport. His aide asked if humanity's decision to allow the ship's independence was correct. Zhang gestured to a small potted plant on his desk, a cutting from an earth oak tree that had survived the destruction of Proxima Centauri, now growing new roots. "The difference between us and the Kasari," he replied, "is that when faced with extinction, they could only imagine using others as tools. We imagined becoming something greater, together." The aide nodded slowly, watching the ships vanish into the darkness beyond Mars. Not lost, but transformed. Not an ending, but an evolution. Humanity's most enduring victory wasn't the war they'd won, but what they'd become in order to win it.